Children of the Night, Chapter 23. Returning Home. Moonsinger stood on a hill overlooking all of Huffington. Due to her attack on the hive 2 nights ago, she was forced to rest before coming back here. What she saw almost made her jaw drop. The town had barely changed from the last time she had been here. Sure, it was bigger than before, but she could still make out familiar streets and buildings. Even the big 4-story building that had once been the orphanage she lived in was still there. All around the city she saw changelings and mind-controlled ponies patrol the streets. Good for her and her forces. Huffington still had no wall protecting it, so they would be able to come from whatever direction they wanted to. She quickly analyzed the situation and carefully studied the paths the patrols were taking before relaying her orders to her forces. An hour later, her forces were all in position around the city, and so Moonsinger gave the signal for the attack. They charged in, while the unicorns in each group cast shield spells around their groups to prevent the changelings from hitting them with their magic. As soon as the fight had begun, Moonsinger felt her blood begin to boil in her veins. It was a feeling she had never felt before, but she enjoyed it very much, and gave into it. Every creature that was foolish enough to stand in her way was crushed by her hoofs or her magic. She did not even hesitate to kill several mind-controlled ponies that tried to attack her, instead of knocking them out. After the battle was over, Moonsinger's coat was tinged a deep red from the blood of her foes. She stood there in the remains of what had once been Huffington, and watched around at her hoofwork. It was then that the cry of a foal snapped her out of it. The foal was burying its face into the torn flank of one of the ponies she had killed, while the city around her burned. Moonsinger looked around in shock. What had she done? This was not what she had intended at all. She had wanted to free Huffington, not burn it to the ground. Even the eyes of her enforcers that looked at her from everywhere were accusing her of going too far. They didn't have to tell her. She knew exactly what she had done, and loathed herself for it. This was one of the many reasons she had never wanted to become an alicorn. "Fire control teams! Get to work and save as much of the city as you can! Evac teams! Get the civilians out of here! It's too dangerous for them while everything is on fire!" she shouted before grabbing the foal in front of her with her mouth and pulling it on her back. Every pony around her nodded and got to work. Moonsinger galloped through the streets of Huffington, tears streaming from her face. She had lost control over herself. That, she swore to herself, would never happen again. She would never again allow herself to be swallowed up by the heat of battle. She teleported civilians out of the hill she had stood on left and right, while galloping through the flames of collapsing buildings. This was all her fault. She had to save as many of them as she could. 4 hours later. Finally, all the fires had been put out, but many of the ponies Moonsinger had wanted to rescue had been killed in her flames. She stood in front of the orphanage she had once lived in. That was now just a burned ruin, and began to cry her heart out. She cried over all the ponies she had killed, and all the destruction she had caused. The Kura had warned her about it time and again, but she didn't listen. She didn't know how long she had been sitting there when a familiar voice came from behind her. "I kinda thought I'd find you here, Moonsinger." "Flametail, come on. Tell me what you think. I went too far. I already know that I did." "You did, but it was not your fault, Moonsinger. You are not yet used to your powers, and let them get out of hand. That could happen to the best of us." "Not to Mother." "Oh, I think you are quite mistaken there. Mother turned into Nightmare Moon, remember? No pony is without flaw, and that includes alicorns." "Alicorns are creatures of war and destruction. I knew this all along before I transformed." "But even so, it may have turned out like this, my friend. You had the best intentions. Just remember to control yourself the next time we get into a situation like this. The path to hell is plastered with good intentions. What? It's nothing. It's something Mother once said. So, report, what's the situation? We have suffered a little over 300 deaths and about 400 injured. The population of Huffington, according to the documents I could recover from the town hall, has been reduced to mere 30%. Most of them died in the battle, or the resulting fire. The storage buildings on the southeast of town have been spared by the fire, so they will have all the food they need and all the materials to rebuild everything that was destroyed. That is at least something. Are there any volunteers among them? No. Actually, a representative chosen by the survivors approached me earlier and asked that we leave as soon as we can. We are apparently not welcome here. Can you blame them? We have burned down their homes and killed many of their friends and family. Flametail, give the order to retreat. We will head north from here to Philadelphia. As you wish, Moonsinger, but what about you? I have something I want to do. I will be right behind you. Flametail took a last glance at his long-term friend and commander before he took to the air to relay her orders to their forces. Moonsinger stood up, after she made sure that Flametail was gone, and went into the former orphanage. Inside the building was burned badly, but she could still imagine how it had once been. Her horn flashed pale white, and in a matter of seconds the building rebuilt itself. Fallen over and burned furniture stood up on itself, while the fire damage seemed to reverse. The upper floors of the building began reconstruction, stone by stone, until it stood there as if nothing had happened. Moonsinger looked around. It was definitely the home of a family with several kids. The photographs on the wall indicated that. On several she could see an orange-coated Pegasus mare, embracing an earth pony stallion and 3 foals. She just hoped that they had survived. As Moonsinger stepped out into the street again, she could see that her spell was doing its job. Huffington's memories were rebuilding the town itself. Everything had memories, even if it was not alive. Giving the town much of her magical energy, she had enabled it to rebuild. It was a spell she had used in the garden a few times, but didn't want to use it any more. It used up much of her energy every time she did, and that had brought her to the brink of death a few times before. Celestia was pleased with her hoofwork. Lost Pegasus had been freed under her command, while she had kept her losses to a minimum. Also, the city had stayed almost completely intact, so there would be no need for massive funds to rebuild it. Now to get to that matter Twilight had asked her to do. Celestia closed her eyes and tried to locate her student, but was unable to do so. She extended her senses and combined them with the sun itself to widen her search radius, but still no sign of Twilight Sparkle. Can you blame her, Celestia? What do you mean, Sola? I did what I had to do. This battle had to be fought, and as a commander I cannot simply leave the battlefield at my leisure. Her mental passenger sighed. Celestia, I've known you for so long now, but this is a side of you I guess I will never be able to understand. Let me ask you, what is Twilight Sparkle to you? She is my personal student. Nothing more? Well, since I don't have any children, I guess she's kind of like a daughter to me. So, and this daughter came to you, pleading for your help in saving her friend's life, and you refused. Can you really blame her for not wanting to be found by you anymore? Well, if you put it that way, I have been a little heartless, haven't I? But I'm sure she'll come around and understand that I was needed here. For what? That is what your second-in-command is for, Celestia. I can't believe I have to lecture you on strategy. A commanding officer in your ranks is there to take command should you be unable to stay in command, or have to leave suddenly to deal with a more important issue. Apple Candy is very capable, so that's no excuse, my friend. But still, what if something had gone terribly wrong? I needed to be here. No! Where you had needed to be is your student's side. I know where she is. You do? But how? I can't locate her anywhere. Tell me. I won't. Why not? She's not only my student, but also the bearer of the element of magic. Equestria will need the elements in the future. I respect her wish to stay hidden from you, and I can understand her reasoning. Celestia, you have lived over 1500 years. I think it is time for you to question your own decisions, or you will end up alone. Please take my advice, since I don't want you to end like me. What do you— And now we have talked enough, Celestia. Until you come around, I will lend you my power, but you will have to do without my advice or company. You have sent your student to learn about friendship, without knowing the first thing about it yourself. With that, Solar Flare, former queen of the Alicorn tribe, secluded herself in the deepest corners of Celestia's mind. All attempts the Princess of the Sun made to contact her stayed unanswered.